resolve to be decent. We believe this country has a future. We intend for our children to live and thrive here. That is what we are defending. All our leaders do is set us against each other. They stage a never-ending national cockfight for their profit and amusement. But we're not going to play along. We will love our neighbors relentlessly in spite of all of it. Now, we plan to use tonight's hour to create a record of this moment right now, before the facts are spun into propaganda by the liars, or the images are pulled off the internet forever, as many of them inevitably will be. Hundreds of neighborhoods across this country, maybe yours. Here are a few. In Columbia, South Carolina, a man called the police when things began to fall apart. Rioters saw him call. They surrounded that man and they beat him. Onlookers laughed as he was pummeled.
Oh, yeah, no. They about to get on his...
In Rochester, New York, a group of 8 men smashed the windows of a jewelry store. A couple who lived above the shop emerged to confront them. Both of them were viciously beaten with a ladder and a 2x4. In Dallas, a man armed with what appeared to be a sword did his best to defend a business from looters. The mob bashed him in the head with a rock and a skateboard.
What are you doing?
It's hard to watch. In San Jose, rioters with crowbars stormed the highway and attacked vehicles trying to pull drivers from their cars. In Birmingham, Alabama, a local reporter called Stephen Quinn was beaten and then he was robbed on live television as he tried to cover the looting.
That is the horrible scene that you see right there as we're wanting to make sure that Stephen is all right.
In Portland, Oregon, a man was beaten, apparently for daring to carry an American flag in public. He never released the flag, by the way.
Done with people like that. Have your pity.
How many of these people died? How many were murdered by the rioters? We don't know yet. At the least, some were likely disabled for life. They were beaten that badly. And then there was the mass stealing. It seemed to be everywhere over the weekend. In Buckhead, an upscale part of Atlanta, rioters stole a Tesla from a dealership and drove it through an indoor mall, just to underscore how completely out of control things were. In Portland, Oregon, mobs looted Louis Vuitton, Apple, and Chase Bank, among many others. They often set fires as they left. In Chicago, protesters fought systemic racism by running through a Nike store stealing shoes. And in Washington, D.C., a federal city surrounded by military bases and protected at all times by the single highest concentration of law enforcement in the world, criminals operated with apparent impunity in the streets. They looted Georgetown last night. They smashed the windows in federal buildings. They desecrated virtually every war memorial in the city a week after Memorial Day. And then, as you likely know, last night they set fire to St. John's Episcopal Church, a 200-year-old building that has welcomed every American president since James Madison. It's right across the street from the White House. For people stuck inside anywhere during this insanity, the sick, the elderly, the powerless, the experience was terrifying. Listen to this woman from Minneapolis.
How was last night?
Scary. They went straight to Office Max, the dollar store, and every store over here that I go to. I have nowhere to go now. I have no way to get there because the buses aren't running.
They've been more deadly, but I've never seen any where the authorities themselves tried to contextualize the violence, apologize, even approve of it. We've seen that. And this country was united in their anguish and anger at that policeman.
But we can't allow this. Imagine if the Secret Service adopted the same attitude. Sorry, can't protect the president today, too risky. How about the military? We'd love to repel the invasion, but unfortunately, we might get hurt. Our apologies. Things would fall apart. Things are falling apart in Minneapolis. And as they collapse, our leadership class seems thrilled. They're doing nothing to calm racial division. In fact, they're eagerly stoking it. The New York Times ran a piece just this morning with the title, How White Women Use Themselves as Instruments of Terror. The subhead read this way, quote, there are too many noosed necks, charred bodies, and drowned souls for them to deny knowing precisely what they are doing. Wait a second. Them? What they are doing? Keep in mind, this didn't run in Louis Farrakhan's Free Weekly. This was the New York Times, this country's most important newspaper. The New York Times is telling you that every single person of a certain color and sex has a hand in genocide. They are stained by blood guilt. They are murderers, every one of them. What do you do to murderers? You know the answer.
State troopers and guardsmen who are right now being taunted, precedented, under orders from Mayor Jacob Frey, who determined that the symbolism of surrendering a precinct headquarters to this angry mob was less important than preserving life. The officers got their orders. They loaded up in the parking lot on the west side of the building, some of them in vehicles, some of them on foot, and they retreated en masse. At that point, the angry mob left unchecked. They stormed the 3rd precinct building itself. They broke in the windows. A frenzy of arson, vandalism, and looting was underway. Now, the rioters who broke into that 3rd precinct, they tried to start fires. That set off the sprinklers. And as they attempted to burn it, ultimately, after ransacking it, they were successful. They also burnt a nearby liquor store. The intensity, the emotion of what we saw here on the streets of Minneapolis, very near the 3rd precinct, spilled over to New York, Denver, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. There have also been intense demonstrations in nearby St. Paul.
And last night, a police station in a major American city was occupied and looted and burned. Most of us assumed we would never live to see something like that happen here, but it did happen. So the question is, has anyone been arrested for doing that? Will anyone ever be arrested? No one in authority seems especially interested in apprehending the people who did it. All of it happened on camera, but the perpetrator may be likely that most of them will never be punished for it. That's striking. It's a very different experience from the ones most Americans have living here. As Minneapolis burns and crowds grow in the streets of Atlanta and many other cities, the rest of us are continuing on as we always do, dutifully following the rules. There are many of those. Every year there seems to be countless new rules to follow. They multiply like insects. We do our best to keep up. We get our permits, apply for our licenses, put on our reading glasses, and check the latest regulations on the internet. We wear our little masks. We keep our dogs on leashes. We drive sober. We don't eat on the subway. We never litter. We make orderly lines and patiently wait our turn. In airports and government buildings, we remove our shoes and submit to body searches from strangers. We lose our dignity every time we do this, but they tell us we must, so we accept it without complaint. In public, we hide what we really think. We bury our natural instincts. We keep our deepest beliefs to ourselves. We know the boundaries. We understand we will be punished for telling the truth. This is the America the rest of us live in. For the privilege of citizenship in a country like this, we work as hard as we can. We never stop sharing what we earn with others. We send money we would rather give to our own children to politicians in faraway cities. With that money, they make new rules. We follow those rules to the letter. That's what we were told to do as children. That's the deal we've struck. At least we thought it was. Now we know that other people have somehow negotiated a far better deal than the one we have. They get to ignore the rules. They don't believe in order or fairness. They reject society itself. Reason and process and precedent mean nothing to them. They use violence to get what they want immediately. People like this don't bother to work. They don't volunteer or pay taxes to help other people. They live for themselves. They do exactly what they feel like doing. They say exactly what they feel like saying. They spray paint their opinions on buildings. On television, hour by hour, we watch these people, criminal mobs, destroy what the rest of us have built. They have no right to do that. They don't contribute to the common good. They never have. Yet suddenly they seem to have all the power. This is hardly the first time something like this has happened in America. Spasms of destructive violence are a recurring feature of our history. In fact, of every country's history. The ideologues will tell you that the problem is race relations or capitalism or police brutality or global warming, but only on the surface. The real cause is deeper than that, and it's far darker. What you're watching is the ancient battle between those who have a stake in society and would like to preserve it, and those who don't and seek to destroy it. Underneath it all, this violence doesn't have that much to do with the behavior of the Minneapolis Police Department. For evidence, watch this tape. It's from the 1992 riots in Los Angeles. It was shot almost 30 years ago. It could have been shot this afternoon.
That's not right! That's not right! That's not right what y'all doing! I came from the ghetto too! Same as all of you did! Why destroy my business? Why destroy my truck? Why steal my computer? I'm trying to make it! Could you understand that?
The first thing you notice about that video, in addition to how overwhelmingly sad it is that it's not a racial dispute. The elderly man could be the grandfather of the young rioters swarming around him. But that's misleading. They are nothing at all alike. The old man is fighting to defend civilization. He's armed only with a hammer, but he's trying. The young men are working to tear it down. And those are the battle lines. They always are. Which side in that war have our leaders taken? Well, watch carefully, and it will become obvious. The rioters in Minneapolis and in other places act as if they're allowed to loot and burn. And in fact, they are allowed. No one stops them. The authorities don't arrest them. Instead, they pander to them, flatter them, desperately try to win their love. Why are masked lunatics setting fire to Wendy's? Because the rest of us are sinful. That's what our leaders tell us. The crimes of the mob are the punishment we deserve. That's their argument. And many seem to buy it. I'm seeing this coming. When you express an opinion our leaders don't like, they call it violence. When criminals commit actual acts of violence, they call it speech. So the game is rigged. Why are the rest of us still playing it? We have more power than we think we do. Our system only functions because dutiful, normal people, people with self-control and decency, and above all, a sense of responsibility toward others, created our system. They sustain the system. They pay the bills. None of the thugs looting Target or the well-paid nihilists on television who are egging them on have added a thing. Nothing. Yet all of the destroyers expect that this arrangement will last forever. And you can see why, because for them, it's been a very good deal. But what exactly are you getting in return for your contributions to this system? The authorities clearly don't care about you. The police won't show up to save your life. Literally. All we can control is our own behavior. Should you keep playing along with all of that? Ponder that the next time they demand you get a permit to put a deck on your own house. And think about it even harder the next time you write a tax check.